Hi, I'm Dale Harris. Do you want to end your suffering and the suffering of millions of Americans from inflation, low wages, disease, drought, floods, and climate disasters? I will tell you how to end the economic, health, and disaster suffering of yourself and millions of other Americans. I can prove the following to you. If the voters of America in this election give Democrats a huge majority in both the United States House and Senate, then much of your suffering and the suffering of the American people will most likely end. But if the voters of America do not give Democrats a huge majority in the House and Senate, then your suffering and the suffering of the American people will probably increase. I will prove that the only way to end your suffering and the suffering of working class Americans is to give Democrats a huge majority in the United States House and Senate. If you want to end your suffering and the suffering of the American people, then you should do the following. 1. Tell everyone you know to watch this video so they can learn that electing Democrats is the way to end their suffering and the suffering of the working class Americans. 2. Tell Democrats running for the House and Senate to watch this video and use the facts in this video to gain more votes. 3. Vote Democratic and convince others to do so. I will prove to you that voting Republican causes the suffering of the American people, and voting Democratic will help to end the suffering of the American people. Both inflation and weather disasters have been caused by the Republican Party. Here is proof that the suffering caused by inflation and weather disasters is the sole fault of the Republican Party and can only be ended if Democrats have a landslide victory in the House and Senate. The following are proven facts. High gas prices are the major cause of inflation. High gas prices are due to America not moving to green energy as fast as possible, to thus reduce demand on gas, reduce gas prices, and thus prevent inflation. Human suffering from droughts, floods, and other extreme weather is due to an increase in average temperature or climate change, which is due to increasing use of fossil fuel due to not quickly switching to green energy as a replacement. Scientists and progressive Democrats have warned America for years that we must quickly move to green energy to avoid climate change and all the human suffering that will be caused by it. Climate denier Republicans in the pocket of fossil fuel companies have consistently rejected the truth that climate change is a problem and have opposed and blocked efforts to quickly move to green energy to reduce use and dependence on fossil fuel. As a result, use of fossil fuel has caused droughts, floods, and other extreme weather suffering of the American people, and dependence on fossil fuel has caused higher gas prices and thus the inflation economic suffering of the American people. Biden and Democrats have passed the Inflation Reduction Act while Republicans oppose the effort to end inflation. That is, Republicans are the cause of inflation and weather suffering and oppose efforts to end the economic suffering and extreme weather suffering of the American people. Republicans must want you and the American people to suffer because they oppose efforts to end your suffering and the suffering of the American people. The only way to end the inflation and extreme weather suffering of the American people is for Democrats to win a landslide victory in the United States House and Senate, so Democrats will have the votes they need to do more to end the suffering of the American people that the Republican Party has caused. If you want the inflation and disaster suffering of the American people to be reduced and end, then you absolutely must do everything in your power to kick all fossil fuel Republicans out of office who oppose quickly moving to green energy, and elect Democrats who will work to quickly end the inflation and disaster suffering of the American people. Save America from suffering by giving Democrats a huge majority in the United States House and Senate. Vote Democratic to end your suffering. To save Americans from suffering, we must educate the American people to the facts that 1. Republicans have caused their suffering, 2. Progressive Democrats would have prevented their suffering, and 3. Democrats will reduce and end their suffering if and only if voters give Democrats a huge majority in the House and Senate. Only then will educated voters vote to end their suffering. Republicans have caused the suffering of the American people and are now lying to the American people and claiming it's Biden's fault. The facts, however, prove that Republicans in the pocket of fossil fuel are the cause of the suffering of the American people and will continue to cause the inflation and disaster suffering of the American people unless voters give Democrats a landslide victory in the United States House and Senate. In Georgia and many other states, the inflation and disaster suffering of the American people is a major issue that can decide elections. But the only way voters will vote to end their suffering is if voters are educated to the truth that 1. Republicans have caused their sufferings, 2. Republicans oppose effort to end the suffering of the American people, 3. Progressive Democrats would have prevented their suffering, and 4. Democrats will end their suffering only if voters give landslide victories to Democrats in the House and Senate. So how can we save the American people from suffering? By educating voters to vote to end their suffering. Voters must financially support progressive media to advertise and educate voters on the truth that Republicans cause their suffering and only Democrats will end their suffering. Voters must tell other voters to watch this video and other efforts to teach voters the truth. MSNBC needs to have Reverend Warnock and other Democratic candidates to educate voters on the fact that the suffering of the American people will only end if voters give Democrats landslide victories in the United States House and Senate. Biden, other Democratic leadership, and progressive Democrats must do everything in their power to get on MSNBC, CNN, and other news media by having public speeches to educate America. Bernie Sanders and other progressive Democrats should host a Save Americans from Inflation and Disaster Suffering town hall that will get national media coverage. It would also be good to tell people to save America from becoming a totalitarian fascist dictatorship ruled by the Antichrist, where people no longer own their own bodies, minds, and souls. All true Christians must vote to destroy the satanic, racist, cult worship, MAGA Republican spiritual threat to the souls of the American people. Ask all voters the following question. Are you fighting for your freedom to own your own body, mind, and soul? Or do you obey your cult leader, news media, or others you worship to believe what the servants of Satan order you to believe? The MAGA cult will take away your freedom to own your own body, mind, and soul. If you do not repent of your sin of the satanic racism of hating other races and the cult worship of a man, then how shall you escape from the damnation of hell? Ask all voters the following. Do you believe what makes you feel good and feel like you are socially approved of, or are you a free thinker with the honesty, humility, and courage to believe a painful truth? Can you repent of the sin of believing satanic lies from the forked tongue of a cult leader so you may escape from the damnation of hell? We must all do everything we can, including phone banking and public meetings, to educate American voters to the truth that Republicans cause their suffering and oppose efforts to end their suffering, and only Democrats are working to end their suffering. Voters must give landslide victories to Democrats in the House and Senate to end their suffering. Please share this video with others to save America from suffering. Tell others you know to give Democrats a landslide victory in the House and Senate to save the American people from inflation suffering and weather disaster suffering. Tell Democratic candidates for the United States House and Senate and state offices to watch this video and use the truth to educate the American people to change the hearts and minds of voters and thus save America. Warning to all Democratic candidates and all voters. Only if the message of this video reaches most voters will Democrats expand control of Congress and then save America from inflation suffering and climate disaster suffering. To win elections, use these talking points. Vote Democratic to end our suffering. Thank you.